So first of all,
Hi, Gibson.
thanks all for joining. My name is Gibson Nascimento. I'm Head of Solutions for EMEA at Sensedia, based in Dublin. And today I have with me Rodrigo Aoki, and I will get him to do his introduction instead of me doing that. Thanks for joining us,
Okay,
Rodrigo, today. A
good,
pleasure to have
excellent.
you here.
Yeah, excellent, Gibson. Thanks a lot for this opportunity. Thank you, Sensedia. So my name is Rodrigo Aoki. I've been working for Bayer for 11 years, and currently I'm leading an area called Technology Enabling in Bayer here in Latin America. And that basically is an area that is responsible to really enable, the strategic technology foundations in Bayer, so that we can leverage better digital solutions in future. That's
Nice.
it.
Perfect. So the topic of today, it's digital transformation and the challenge that are around this very interesting and I would say trending topic at the moment.
Yeah.
And I know that, so we have Rodrigo sharing the challenge, especially that Bayer faced during this journey, and as well as some of the lessons learned. And I'd like to start with I would say a very key question for this, which is how do you see the role of an architecture reference when it comes to this big initiative? We know that reference architectures, they play an important role in terms of defining how applications integrate between each other, risks and things like that. But in case of Bayer, how do you see the role of this reference architecture taking place?
Yeah, so it is a very good question. Yeah. And well, let's try to start with one word. Maybe consistent is really, the result or the intention of having a reference architecture. Yeah, and especially on environments that we are now that are very complex, ambiguous, uncertain, VUCA environments. The consistent in following a specific vision, a specific strategy is key to ever strategic activity for its success. Yeah. So when we started at that time, we noticed at that very beginning that having a reference architecture, we would give you to the delivery teams a kind of a reference, yeah, a kind of guardrails, so that they can be recommended so that they can really follow in order to really deliver, execute their activities on a daily basis. So in Bayer, we do have a very complex system landscape. We are talking about more than 5,000 applications across the world. Here in Brazil, we are around 200 applications, and you can imagine how complex is, the integration aspect. Talk about data integration. And if we would not have built this reference architecture in order to really construct the path forward, would be very hard to really explain or guide those delivery teams in order to do this change. Not only IT IT teams, but also business colleagues. Yeah. So that's it. And also at the end, we are all contributing to have really a sustainable and scalable environment in terms of data integration.
True. You mentioned two very interesting aspects there. And based on my experience, I would say that those would be, perhaps in my view, the main two challenges. One, it's the legacy application. So having legacy applications, it's something that every single company has, from the financial services to health to e-commerce, retail. So every single company in this world would have at least one application. And you mentioned that only in Brazil you have 200 applications, right? So based on my experience, I've seen the challenge to expose like information from these applications. They vary from one, the technological part, which is how you can ensure that whatever is in that application will be securely exposed, or if it's able to be exposed for as well. And there's also a bit of culture there as well, because again, previous experiences, I've faced situations where I would discuss with the application owner and to inform them that we would be building integrations and we would need data from their application. And for that, we would be bringing now a new layer that would be an API to expose data for other applications within the company. And I always face some situations like, actually, that's my data. I do have the data here. And if you want, there is a store procedure that you can use to collect the data. I'm not exposing a new service or whatsoever. So, how did you see this in Bayer's context, or how have you been seeing this? Because I think that this is an ongoing process, right? So, what are the challenges of exposing such a large number of applications to this new reference architecture?
Yeah, so regarding this accountability of the data, I think 4 years ago we started some initiatives called data as an asset, and this gives to the company a kind of new culture around data, So as you mentioned, in the past, basically the application owners that is responsible for an application that deals with a specific data is the data owner also. And maybe sometimes he would not like to really share this data, even if it is for a really good purpose on the other side, So within this data as an asset inside our, let's say, integration program, in order to build this reference architecture, at the beginning, we established a process or a governance around how to build those data assets. It means that before building a microservice, before building an API, for instance, for a customer, we launched or we established a workshop around 2 to 3 days, together with also application owners, data owners, people from the business, from several areas, in order to define, for instance, what is customer, what you need what are the attributes that you need from customer in order to really use in our application, and also to be shared in other applications across Bayer. And after 3 days, maybe those common areas or cross areas, they have a common understanding about that. And then we start to build, the data model, the way we are going to expose that to a layer above, building microservices, how we're going to manage the API across an API management, and later on how we are going to expose that. So it was, I think, it was a combination of new technologies available in order to do that, together with a change on the culture on how we are dealing with data. And it is not really a short-term task. It's really a journey, and we are still under this journey. I'm telling this is the optimal situation, but we have a lot of opportunities still ahead in order to transform the way we deal with data in Bayer.
Okay, fair point. You mentioned data a lot, right? But what about the concept of services? Do you see that because we see that most of these applications that are the big dinosaurs, they hold a lot of data. Would you see that you have some applications that also offer some kind of services as well internally? Not only data, but like some kind of processing of data as well, like analytics or something like that. Was that ever considered as part of this whole integration bit?
Yes, it is. We currently are dealing with one, big one. It's regarding identity access management, a service, in order to unify and try to really establish a common way in how to identify and also give access to a specific user across the applications, instead of having each application its own login process with a different database, different passwords to have the login done in that application. We built a kind of central service in order to really establish this across all applications. Yeah, and this includes also the dinosaurs, the legacy ones. Yeah, so we did not migrate or implemented that service in all applications that we currently have, but we started these strategic, let's say, initiatives. We call it IAM, Identity Access Management Strategic Initiative. And then we built this service based on our Azure AD and so on, in order to facilitate the implementation of this login component across all applications, including the legacy ones. Yeah, maybe this is one example of service that I came into my mind that I can share. Yeah, using microservice.
I suppose that you may have many others.
Yeah.
Another thing, I suppose that in this big context of number of applications, you may not only have like real-time, near real-time integrations. Is there any consideration in terms of batch applications as well, and how would you deal with that as part of this composition of the architecture?
Yeah, so
like batch processing.
So in our big picture in the architecture, and the reference architecture, we about two basic domains. Yeah, one is the online architecture, yeah, where you consume data through online way, this way. And then there is this batch architecture, yeah, and we use that when we do have process or demands that we don't need really real-time data available, yeah. And the solutions like when we would like to transfer data, like an AGI solution from one external partner, can be banking to HR internally in order to make our payment and our payroll. Those kind of situations or solutions or those demands that fits in this batch architecture. Yeah, so there are some others. Yeah, in the distribution side, in crop science business, we need to have the inventory stock, number of stock in our system in order to plan how much we are going to produce, in terms of our products to the field. Yeah, and then for this integration also, it's not an online architecture. We are using batch architecture. They use also an AGI solution in order to put a file there, and then we consume it through this batch and share across our applications the data or the information needed. Yeah.
Really good. And reason that question came to my mind is because nowadays we've been talking a lot about APIs, real time, instant feedback, and people sometimes forget that there is still a bit, actually not a bit, but a huge piece of work that may be integrated offline. That doesn't really require a super infrastructure to transport megabytes, gigabytes of data at once online, because that's not really the need. Interesting.
No. No need, and there should be an assessment around the trade-off, because you should really think about what you really need through online access. Most times the data do not need to be hot. I think that's the term.
That's the term, hot
so
data.
Hot data. So you should be really aware of that and do a minimal assessment on that in order to define what to do online and what does not require online data.
Perfect. Then, Rodrigo, coming back to what we were discussing, so when you mentioned about the role of the reference architecture, right? So we discussed about the legacy. That was one of the topics that you mentioned. But the other topic that brought my attention is the business itself, because again, coming back to the experiences and the cases that we see from other companies as well, one of the other challenge, it's getting the buying from the business, right? So sometimes the business do understand the need to change the approach, to modernize the legacy applications, but they don't really see the real value at the end, because normally, or let's say not so long ago, IT would be considered as a cost and not as an investment. And nowadays, we've been seeing that more and more, especially when it comes to the financial services sector.
Mm-hmm.
IT has been seen more as like something that walks side by side with the business, because
Mm-hmm.
business needs IT to enable their business nowadays. It's like new products, new integrations. In the financial services, we've been discussing a lot about open banking, open finance, so how you connect all the different players together. How was this process to get the buy-in from the business within Bayer? So was it more like a combination of needs, or there was a lot of resistance? How was it?
It's a
Or
very
was it a
good
mix?
question. So it was a mix of both. But I would say that yeah, it's again it's a journey. Yeah, you should start somehow. Yeah, at beginning, due to the fact that this reference architect, the way that we are dealing with integrations now on, it's not very much tangible at the first moment for them. Yeah, at beginning, a lot of analogies trying to explain how complex is our environment and how much we are investing in order to keep running our applications, and that we need to change. So we use some analogies like changing from the spaghetti environment to the lasagna environment, a more layered approach. But the resistance, even though explaining all the challenges that we are facing, the running part of our operation, IT operation, was not very enough at beginning to really break this resistance. Then what we did, we keep going on. Yeah, we kept it going on. So uh, uh, we started. This is maybe one lesson learned that I can share. We started with a bottom-up approach at the beginning, trying to really at that time froze all the initiatives that we were conducting to establish a new project,
Mm.
saying to the company that we are going to implement a new integration model with a new platform, a new concept. And we thought at that time that 6 months would be enough. 8 months that would be enough to implement something that would enable a new integration procedure, a new way of work. But we were wrong. Yeah, we
Yeah,
passed 6, 8 months, and then we couldn't. Then projects got delayed, and we kept with the old environment. Then we changed that. Yeah, we
mhm.
did not give up. We gave up. We decided to do a kind of top-down approach, yeah, taking
Okay.
specific projects that are key from the business, and then in these specific projects, try to deal with integrations in a new manner. Yeah. For sure, in order to deal with a new manner, a minimal governance or platform should be in place. Then this we at that time we could have. Yeah, we established that. Then with those that top-down approach with those specific and strategic projects from the business being delivered, and in terms of operation later on with minimal issues on the operations regarding integrations afterwards, we started to really little by little getting the confidence from the business that, oh, this is a new integration strategy for us, and this works much better than previously. Yeah, and then yeah, little by little, this was changing.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a year, I think 2 or 3 years ago, I was in Germany at that time. I remember that there was a recognition to a specific area in marketing sales from business operation, saying that, oh, come on, that specific project for our extranet, for our distributors, I mean, the inventory solution that I told you at the beginning, it is working very well with minimal impact and with minimal stops in the production. Yeah? So congratulations. And they started to foster to other business areas that, oh, come on, you should follow integration as IT is now saying to us. Yeah.
Mm.
So when they started to foster this by their own, I think this is really the big goal. And from now on, I think changes start to get much easier. Yeah. When talking about APIs, I don't have more to really explain what is an API to every area in Bayer. Yeah? Most of them are, especially areas from the commercial area here in Brazil, and they know now the importance of APIs, the new way of integration. Yeah? But it is a journey, yeah. So I'm talking about 4 years from now, maybe even more. Yeah.
Yeah, I suppose that
So,
telling that they should stop all of their IT initiatives, projects for 6 months is like something very challenging, but at least you tried.
yeah.
Just 1 second, there was someone raising hands here.
Okay.
Victor, I guess, Victor, you want to ask a question?
Yeah,
Please.
my name is Victor. Working with Pardini here in Brazil. It's a lab. My team main goal is integration with another labs that we act like a third-party contractor to them to do some exams. And I'm working the integration team. We are developing a new tool, a new way to do the integrations with our clients. And we are starting to build this new architecture to do this in the business. About the reference architecture, I draw a comparison with legal constitution in a way that it can be both flexible, so it adapts to all the changes in society, or it can be a hard constitution in a way that you can not change very much of it. The reference architecture, it has to be something on the likes, because if you have to have a reference, it has to be some guidelines and rules inside of it, but it still has to be flexible enough to adapt to the different kinds of systems and clients and different services that you are going to get by with. So my question would be, how do we define this line, or where do we have to have this reference being hard in a sense that is almost unchangeable, and where do we get the flexibility?
Yeah. Okay, I'm not sure if you have something similar to that within your context.
Yeah, so I can try to answer. It's a very, very good question, yeah, because when we define it, I mean, reference architecture, guardrail, yeah, in order to establish a common view about integrations in this case, I think we are defining the speed limit for the avenue, for the road, yeah. So we are saying that the speed limit, for instance, it's 60, then maybe you can speed up a little bit and goes up to 80. But if you go more than 100 miles per hour, you can be in a huge problem. So I think our reference architect is somehow the same. We are giving to the colleagues the risks behind it, speed limit. And then afterwards, if you like to speed more than 100 miles per hour, you can. But be sure that your business case, the value that you are bringing in a short, mid-term in that solution is really high in order to assume this risk. Yeah. So basically, I think the reference architecture in general, the integration, for sure, it's not a binary definition. Yeah, do that or don't do that. Should have a kind of flexibility, and flexibility comes with risk assessment, awareness, and also the benefits of the solution that you are trying to implement in a short midterm. Yeah. If the business case, I mean, it's really high and it's worth to have such risks in place, yeah, why not? Let's try. Yeah, but we cannot really be too strict to a specific recommendation. Yeah, we should really talk and understand the whole environment. And so that's the current situation, I think, here in Bayer.
Yeah, and just to complement on that, I fully agree with what you said. It's not a binary, so it's not written in stone. So the reference architectures, they are, let's say, a snapshot of a given moment in time that a company it's going through, right? So you should be prepared for, so if you have different types of partners integrating with you, so you should take into account how those different partners will be able to do so. So it's either via online APIs, or there is a particular partner that only runs some kind of patch integration. So you should take those into account. But over time, of course, if we start talking about reference architectures that were written 10 years ago, and you never changed those, so you became legacy for sure, and you need to allow for flexibility. So you need to allow for revisions on top of your reference architecture over time. So it's not something that you are going to write it today, design a very nice diagram, put on a wall and say, stick to it for the next 100 years. So so there are new technologies that are coming. There are new tools that support us in either speeding up the integration or speeding up the development of your backend, exposing backends. And it's something that you need to take into account. I don't know, you have to define some cycles, as we used to say. You plan, you design, you build, and then you review. So you should define the cadence, the right cadence for your company. So that would be my consideration here.
Yeah, I completely agree, Gibson. Yeah.
Perfect. I hope that's the answer.
It's very well. Thank you.
Good enough.
Good, Victor.
Thank you. Thanks for the question.
Thank you. Yeah.
And then we discussed about this flexibility. I think that companies like Bayer, compliance, it's a very high topic in the agenda, right? Because there's a lot of things that you just can't do. So you can't simply update one system without validating if everything is still running correct, or if you're not going against any regulations. In terms of defining this architecture, I would say that flexibility is something important, but then you have the compliance, you have the innovation, but then you also have the compliance. So many things going against compliance, but I would say that in the end, they still can work together. How was your experience there?
Yeah, so good question. Yeah, and I see that compliance or regulated environments at the end, they are not really against, but we are somehow enabling what they are saying. Yeah, so we know that sometimes they came, oh, you don't shoot that, you cannot really exchange that data, you should be care of that specific regulation. But at the end, what was our message to them since the beginning of the collaboration? We kept saying, and we still keep saying that in order to really enable in a sustainable, scalable way what they are seeing in terms of compliance and also regulations, you should have a very good and flexible reference architecture to enable that. Yeah. Otherwise, you keep working an ad hoc way in order to really try to deal with specific issues in isolated solutions. So basically, since the beginning, we try to assess together with them all the pros and cons and trying to define a new architecture. See also in a global environment what are the security issues that we should be aware of. Yeah? And then little by little, with all the functionalities from the tools available in the market, we started to share with them how we could tackle and also manage that security issue or compliance issue for them. Regarding innovation, I think it's the same. Yeah? You can bring a lot of, RPA, chatbot, AI solutions in place in Bayer, but if you don't have really a reference architecture to sustain all that number of solutions, digital solutions that are coming to Bayer environment, we end up with a very, very huge complexity. And in order to keep them operating, the costs behind or the effort behind is really too high along the time. Yeah. So that's more or less the balance that we see. Yeah, on one side we see security and compliant matters. One side we see innovation. They go together in parallel. But in the basis, in the foundation, we do have some foundation architectures, reference architectures in order to support that to be scalable in this digital world. Yeah, we are talking a lot about this is intended to be focusing in the integration part, but we do have some foundation architectures in other domains like cloud, like AI, like IoT that we established in Bayer, and they are all somehow connected. Yeah, we cannot isolate them because at the end, in a digital environment, they are all connected. But all then supports this concept of enabling a proper, secure environment in Bayer, an innovative environment in Bayer. Yeah, so I think that's it.
Very good. Conscious of time, one last question then.
Okay.
Huge effort, a lot of discussions, geographic variations. My last question to you then is, was it worth? Do you think that all the effort paid off at the end? I mean, having all of these headaches, was it good? Did it solve the problems, or is it solving the problems that you tried to resolve?
Yeah, so it was definitely worth, yeah, Gibson, because if we look at the past 5 years ago, if we kept in the same way from that time right now, we could have most likely our operation really in a very bad situation. Yeah? I mean, financially speaking, also effort speaking. Yeah, as you know, in order to keep a very obsolete system application environment, you should have also a professionals that works in this obsolete environment. In order to also keep our team motivated to really work on that, if we had as 5 years ago, maybe we were with no professionals working right now to us in order to support this very old and obsolete environment. The other thing is that we really accelerated the way that we are dealing with digital solutions. Yeah. If we were as 5 years ago in terms of integration, we could not bring in a sustainable way solution as RPA, chatbots, even IoTs in Bayer. Yeah? We are starting to use this reference architecture to integrate data and from the intelligent devices from the field. So it was really an enablement, this project, and I mean this journey, and it's worth. Yeah, you should do that somehow in order to change and to contribute with the digital transformation in your company. Yeah, that's the point. Yeah. Also, yeah, you during this journey, I mean those years, you sometimes go into some, let's say, to the bad side of the cycle, yeah, because there was a lot of resistance. Maybe the outcomes does not come at the proper time, but as I told you at the beginning, I think the consistent and on having really a vision or a specific purpose ahead, it's key to really keep the motivation or the inspiration from the whole team aligned in order to achieve that vision. Yeah, and that was what we did. Yeah, since now, but it is very worth, and every company, in my opinion, should, if it's not started this, I mean, journey around integrations in order to really establish a new environment.
Perfect. So I would like to open for questions, if we have any. Don't think so.
I have one. I have one question here.
There we go.
I guess
Go ahead.
Rodrigo, and I think that what you mentioned is the reference architecture was paramount to enabling future projects, enabling the digital transformation for Bayer, right? And what are the next steps? What are you aiming for? What's Bayer aiming for with this initiative for the next, say, 2 or 3 years?
So our aiming in terms of IT, our vision is that IT could be really a competitive aspect to Bayer. Yeah, in order to achieve that, we are, as I told you, I think some minutes ago, we do have not only a reference architecture or foundation architecture for integration, but we started also for cloud, for IoT, for AI, for whatever, chatbot, RPA, all those key technologies available in the market. We started to build this sense of foundation platforms and architecture so that our colleagues in IT, but also colleagues from the business could take advantage of that. Yeah, and that maybe the next step is to really evolve each and every one of those foundation architects so that we could democratize even more our technology so that IT in future could not be accessed for each and every demand from the business. I mean, giving more empowerment, giving more accountability from the business side, maybe working as fusion teams, IT and business, in order to deliver a specific solution, not having IT as a central and dependency aspect of the demand. Yeah. So we really would like to democratize our technology so that this could be accessible. In terms of integration, I mean, I think as a next step would be to have the so-called citizen integrators, yeah, giving to them some platforms and tools so that they can do their own integrations, depending on the scope for sure, yeah, but maybe this is one aspect of integration.
Interesting. Something that you mentioned there. More and more I've been seeing business and IT teams working together. So you don't only have the product owner, but you have someone from the business that understands the business in the daily calls, discussing with the team, understanding the functionalities that they are trying to implement. Yeah, really good question. Really good question.
Good.
Anything else? Yeah, we have Clayton. Please, Clayton, open your mic.
Hey, I think that my question is regarding the sustainability on when it comes to creating reference architectures when you have a huge landscape of technologies and when usually the architecture team is reduced in comparison with the size of the company. So if you stay, like you mentioned previously, we are implementing RPA and also chatbots and going to the cloud and using APIs. So the development teams are always requiring from us reference architectures or guidance, and we are kind of dedicating, we don't know how much time to dedicate into being too strict into defining those architectures and kind of not waste time, but like dedicate a lot of time on that in comparison to exploring new technologies and exploring the path for them to say, hey, this is something you can also use to solve some of the problems, but also you have to be responsible or autonomous enough to generate your own architecture. So I think that by the end of the day, the question comes to how autonomous should the members of the organization to be able to generate their own architecture, or do you have centralized teams to do that to enable digital transformation? How is the dynamics in the company?
Yeah, it's a very good question.
Yeah, it's a very good question indeed. If you allow me to start with this one, so I would say that autonomy, it's something that can be beneficial, but can also be let's say, dangerous at certain stage, because you may end up with having completely separated architectures that are completely independent, and then they don't talk to each other within your own company. So, but of course, autonomy, it's also beneficial because once you let your teams to decide and to try something on their own, that can actually become a reference for the other teams as well. So I believe that there needs to be a balance and a trade-off as well there, a balance where you give autonomy to your teams to test things on their own, but then it's always interesting to not have a final answer, but at least to review and see the feasibility of extending this to other sectors or other business units within the company. And then I suppose that I understand what you're coming from, because at the end you have one team that is responsible for defining the reference architecture, for experimenting new things, for testing new applications or new technologies, and at the end that team becomes also a bottleneck because there's so much things that they can do, and at the end they can't really absorb everything.
Yeah.
So for me, it's a balance of giving autonomy to your teams, but also making sure that whatever they are deciding, it's really beneficial for the whole company. Otherwise, you, like I said, you will end up having small companies within your own company, and then once you need to integrate with one of the silos, you are actually unable to do so because they have their own architecture, and it's something that no one can really understand. That would be my answer to you.
Yeah, and just to contribute also, Gibson, Clayton, yeah, I really seen the same way. And I think we can see from the market also that the situation around having a central team, the capacity of the central team is not really enough to attend all the teams. So, and we will never be, I think, yeah. And we should deal with this balance that Gibson is saying. Yeah? And one aspect that maybe helps is really prioritize really the specific and key projects or demands that you should or your team should be more connected to. And then with those key and specific important projects, you can try to establish or define some champions, the ones from the delivery teams that will have the role of also share and foster the strategy, foundation technology, reference architecture across other teams. Yeah, so this would be something that I think it helps. We are trying to do that here. Another aspect is the point of, foundation, or enabling versus operational focus. Yeah, I think in order to really enable a new technology, your team or the architecture team or the foundation team should operate at the beginning together with the delivery teams the solution that we are trying to enable. Yeah. Once we give to them the proper capability and they are mature enough to keep running by themselves, we keep our focus from the operation to enabling, and then we started to foster new technologies or new reference architectures. And the key in this situation is to really define or know when or up to when your team should be together with the delivery team in order to give to them the maturity enough around this technology. Yeah. So this is another aspect that we are also discussing a lot right now. And I'm pretty sure that I think the situation of having not enough capability to support every and each delivery teams across the companies will not be solved. Yeah, this is is given. I mean, this is the situation from all the components from the market, and I think we should deal with this balance, with this trade-off, yeah, across activity.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Rodrigo, I know that we may have other questions, but conscious of time and busy agenda, so I'd like to thank you very much. Thanks all for joining. It was a pleasure having you here and talking to you today, Rodrigo.
Okay,
and
yeah, my pleasure.
Wish you all the success in this journey.
Okay,
See you
thank
soon.
you, Gibson. See you soon. Thank you, guys.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Congrats, guys.
Thank you.